You know, I'd like to say I was discovered in a play or something like that, but no, it was just another audition with somebody named Bob Clark at the Sutton Place Hotel, which back in its day was the hotel to stay at, especially during TIFF and things like that, Toronto International Film Festival. And so I met him in a hotel room, and he gave me some scenes to read. They weren't actually scenes that my character was going to be playing. There were scenes that Keir Dullea would be playing. So I read those, and Bob pretty much told me at that moment after I finished that I was terrific, and I got the part. Not that part, though, he said.
I know what you did, Billy! Help me, Billy! 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 No! Billy, no!
I knew nothing, never heard of it. I wasn't a big horror film fan, so I hadn't heard about Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, and didn't know anything about Bob Clark, didn't know who he was. You know, if I'd been an actress, I would have been wary about going to a hotel room to meet a director, but you know, for me it just was another job, another gig, another chance to make some money. At the time, I just started acting. Well, I hadn't just started acting, but things were pretty tough in those days. There wasn't a lot of work in Toronto like there is now. I had 4 kids by that time, so it was just important to get a gig.
Who's this?
That's a friend of Claire's, a very nice young man from the town, Chris Hayden.
I didn't send my daughter here to be drinking and picking up boys.
It turned out Keir couldn't be in town ahead of time, and Olivia Hussey wanted to be in town ahead of time to work on her scene. She hadn't worked for quite a while, and she wanted to work with Keir, so he couldn't be in town. So Bob asked me if I would rehearse all those scenes with Olivia, and he had the house way ahead of time, so I had this chance to not only work with Olivia, but work in the house that became the sorority, and to watch Bob Clark right up close talk to all his film crew. They would come in and interview for jobs as well, and he'd run things past them about what he wanted to do and what he wanted them to do. I remember one time he met a sound guy, and the sound guy, he said to the sound guy, for this particular moment, there's a moment in the film where I want something to happen, some special effect. I can't remember what it was, but it had something to do with the choir of young people at the door. And the sound guy said, I don't think I can do that. And Bob said, well, I think you can if you rheostat the reed sing and turn it around and refeed the S-stop and blah, 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 you know, all this stuff. And the sound guy thought about it for a minute and said, that's how you could do it. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that's good. So that just shows the kind of consummate filmmaker Bob Clark was. He knew he could probably do everybody's job. And sometimes he almost did. He was a whirling dervish on the set.
Well, who the hell is he?
Good night.
You're a real gold-plated whore, Mother.
See you
know
next week.
that? Okay. Hey, call before you come. I'm gonna have to get my parents used to
I'll just get a couple of my friends and we'll go skiing.
Lynn, I think it was one of her first films, and but she was very quiet, and but very, very, very good actor. And she always claims that I gave her her first film kiss, although it was a very innocent kiss at the doorway, if you remember the film. And since then we've become good friends, and I always get a big kick when we go to shows and things like that, signing shows, because everybody loves to meet her, and she always carries a plastic bag to put over her face. You know, she's got a tremendous sense of humor, as everybody did on the show. You know, so my relationship with her and with everybody on the set was just A1. We just had a ball doing it. Andrea Martin, you know, she's a very funny lady, as everybody, I don't have to tell anybody that. But she was very funny on the set. We had a few people. I knew most of the cast members, one way or the other. We had all done background, or we'd all done something or the other. We'd all met in an audition room, or been on a beer commercial, or whatever the hell we did in those days to survive. And so it was just like, it was basically like a sorority, fraternity, all mixed up, and we just had a lot of laughs. And the crew was great. Bert was great behind the camera. He was very helpful. He was always patient with the actors. And Andrea was probably the funniest of them all. You know, she had a great sense of humor, and you need that on the set. And we needed that on the set because it was, you know, it was dark material. And I find it's good to have a laugh when you're doing dark material.
We won't be long, Mrs. Mack.
All right, dear.
See you later.
Phil.
Yeah?
Phil, listen, I'm sure Claire will be all right.
I hope so.
And I just want to tell you that I'm going to go to my sister's for the holidays, so I might not be here when you get back.
That's okay. Look, just checking on Bob before you leave. Could you do that?
Of course I will. And you bundle up.
Yeah, we'll be all right, Mrs. Mack.
Mrs. Quaid and Mr. Harrison have asked me to extend their thanks to you for coming out on this cold night to help.
John Saxon, I didn't work with him a lot. He was quiet. He's very down-to-earth guy. You know, we worked together at the police station. We worked together in the final scene, the setup for the final scene. And he was always very nice to me, very professional. And you know, he had a lot of pressure on him because he was a last-minute replacement. And he came in, I mean, I think they took him straight from the airport to the search area where we were all gathered around that barrel of flame. And it was an extremely cold night, I remember that. Thank God for my fur coat. And he was very nice. And so, you know, that gets things off to a great start. When the star of the show is accessible and friendly and relaxed, it relaxes everybody, and it makes for a much better working relationship.
A high school girl's been murdered. Mr. Harrison's daughter is missing. And now at the house where she lives, the other girls are getting obscene phone calls. Don't you think we ought to look into it, Nash?
Well, Lieutenant, I guess, sure.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Yeah, thanks, Ken.
I think, in fact, it actually flew under the radar back in the day. You know, that was kind of an odd time for Canada. We had the Canadian Film Development Corporation, a government agency, was giving out money for productions, and their demand was that the cast had to be 65% Canadian content. So producers right away figured, oh, that means 35% non-Canadian content. So they started bringing in American and English actors wherever they could. And so a lot of the good actors, and I was doing leads in other films before that, what was left for us was just supporting roles. And in fact, at one point, Bob did say to me, and I know Keir probably doesn't like to hear this, but he did say to me that he wished he'd met me before he cast Keir, because I might have been able to do, he would have wanted me to do that film. And Bob and I later on worked together in many of his films. You know, he always wanted me in his films. And as an example, Porky's, he gave me one of the most important roles in that film, and he and I really loved working together and collaborating. So as to its importance at that time, I think it was just another film. There was all kinds of, there was a lot of what Canadian filmmakers were trying to do then were imitate the Americans, their successful films. So my first film was a biker film right after Easy Rider. And then I did a hockey movie called Face Off that was like Love Story with Ryan O'Neal and Ally McGraw. And every time Canada did a film or it got financed, it would be like an imitation of a successful American film. So that's where we were at the time. There were the odd artsy craftsy films being done in Canada. Probably nobody watching this film would know about Going Down the Road, for example, which was done paid for by a credit card. But you know, basically they were just trying to make films that would make money, and so they would really try to go commercial. And Bob saw in this script a unique idea, and he honed the script, and certainly nobody thought it was going to be a classic. You know, you're just on the set every day. You don't know. You're not saying, "Oh, this is going to be classic." You know, you're just going to say, "Can we get this scene done in time and get out of this location and get on to the next location? Can we get these hockey players to stop hitting Hart in the head with pucks and shoot the scene, and so on and so forth?" So you never think that far ahead. You just think it's another film. We got to get it done. They hired a bunch of guys, a hockey team from the University of Toronto, and they said, "You're going to be in a film, and that's an actor, and just shoot pucks at him," you know. And they thought the harder their shot, the more impressive it would be, and the more likely it would be in the film, and maybe they'd get discovered. So they bounced a few off my face mask. Yes.
Well, her father came to pick her up at 1 o'clock today, and she didn't show. So he went down to the police station with Phil and Bob.
What happened?
They didn't take it seriously.
Why?
I don't know. I think they figured she was shacked up somewhere.
I liked the ending. I knew what was happening when we were setting it up. I like things being ambiguous. I like leaving people, you know, like that, you know, on edge, and you know, I did think at the time, hey, wow, you know, they could make a sequel out of this, or they could make a whatever. This could be great, you know. I live in Ontario now, outside of Toronto, and I've moved back from LA, and I've become very proactive with our industry up here, especially the independents and young filmmakers, and I'm mentoring a lot of them, and a lot of them come to me, they contact me, and Black Christmas is a big part of their reason for wanting to become a Canadian filmmaker, for example. And I do give advice to young filmmakers who ask me, you know, what should I do? How can I get started in the film industry? And I tell them, well, the best advice I can give you is do a horror movie or a sci-fi movie. They're pretty cheap to do, and you will definitely have a fan audience to come and see it, because horror fans and sci-fi fans are what fan means. They're fanatics. As you give them a lot of blood, give them a lot of gore, give them a lot of special effects, and they'll support your movie. It's like when I did The Brood with David Cronenberg. the the most directing I believe I ever heard him do was when he looked at a scene and he thought about it for a moment and then he said, "More blood." And that was about his only directing. And that's what they want to see. You give them that, or you give them something. I mean, actually, in Black Christmas, you don't see much blood. I think there's some blood on the crystal. And that's the only blood we really see. But you gave them something else. You gave them suspense. You gave them terror. You gave them what's upstairs, what's downstairs, what's in the basement, what's up in the attic, that kind of stuff. There's hardly any gore. Like I said, there's only just you've got the blood on the end of the crystal, the stabbing, and it's diffused, you know, from the crystal. But most of it is just is distant terror. It's the hands going up the trellis. It's the shadow in the glass. It's something in the basement. It's the hatch opening and closing in the attic. It's the rocker rocking. It's the cat jumping on Lynn. It's the eye through the crack. It's the voice on the phone. It's you know, it's all these things. It's like I have this thing. My wife has a lot of trouble with horror movies, and she's the perfect sucker for these moments, these slam cuts where you jump at something. She jumps quite a bit. And for instance, I went to see a filmmaker's 20-minute horror movie, and afterwards he asked me how it was, and I said, well, Brooke jumped 5 times. That's how good it is, you know. And so that's my criteria. And in Black Christmas, there's a few jumps in it. There's a few moments that are startling. That's something that's tricky for a filmmaker to do, you know. It's like I have this joke where you have the straight man say, "Why you're such a good actor?" But as he's saying, "Why are you such a good?" and he starts to say actor, you jump in on top of him and say timing, like it's bad timing, in other words. But that's what fabulous filmmaking is knowing how to time that. And I remember years later, Bob was shooting a film and he was doing it all digital. He was editing all digital as he went. We were down at Dino De Laurentiis' studios in North Carolina. And I said, "How do you like this new editing?" He said, "It's too fast. It's too fast. You know, it's done before I have a chance." He says, "I like to marinate on it. I like to think on it. In the old days, you clipped the film and you put it together and then you ran it and you think about it. And before you did all that scissoring and everything, you really had to think about where you were going to come in, where the cut was going to happen, and where you were going to take it the next time, you know. Now it's just all too easy and you can do it 900 different ways. And by then, God, you don't know what choice you should make. And half the time it might be the wrong choice, you know. The Canadian funding was, what they were trying to do was act like executive producers, basically. They were trying to pick the right movie to fund that would make money, that would get their money back. And so they were funding very commercial films. They weren't, you know, we have a separate organization in Canada called the National Film Board, and they make very artistic films. They make animation, they make documentary, and they do make some drama. They do make docudrama and things like that. And they're very artistic, and they get full funding for that. The Canadian Film Development Corporation was set up to make money. That's what they wanted to do. And so, you know, they funded some of the most crappy commercial films in order to make their money back so they could fund more money. They expected this thing to compound, and eventually they'd have make so much money they could fund anything. You know, that was their idea. They had a fabulous thing of for every you know, you got 150% back on, you know, taxes and all that kind of stuff. So it was there was some slimy things going on, but not with Black Christmas. You know, it was one of those things where you know, even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. And this was a terrific nut, and it had terrific producers. Bob Clark was at the beginning of a wonderful film career, director, terrific actors. So it was done right and done properly, good music, good special effects. And, you know, every once in a while a gem comes out of it, you know, and Black Christmas was a gem.
It's me, Billy. Agnes, don't you tell what we did, Agnes.
You know, Cronenberg was in Montreal doing beginning his career there with some very small, horrific films, unique vantage point. There was a film I had turned down just before this about college, called College Frankenstein or something. You know, there was a. I think somebody had the idea that, like I just given some advice to young filmmakers, do a horror movie first. So maybe, you know, people looked at it and said, you know, comedy is really tough to sell, you know, drama is really tough to sell. But horror, you know, all I really need is something horrible springing out of the closet and eating up the girl, and I'm going to make some money. And I can make a movie out of that, and somebody will give me some money. So I think maybe that was the sensibility at the time. I as a young actor at the time, you know, like I say, I was just trying to make a buck. I didn't think that I wasn't cognizant of any horror thing going on per se. Well, it didn't do anything for my career most of my career. I don't even think I ever had it on my demo tape, because demo tapes weren't around then. But the one thing it's done for me is it's brought me in touch with a lot of people who love it, and you know, I have very affectionate feelings for people who love that film and some of the other genre films I've done. And so, you know, I go to a lot of signing shows. There's some signing shows, you know. I don't go to a lot, but I love meeting those people and talking to them about it. And you know, there's people who seem to know much more about Black Christmas than even I know about. And so I'm learning something. And for me, it's become a classic, right? So for me, what that means for me is I'm going to be around a long time. Long after I'm gone, there's still going to be people watching it, enjoying what I did and enjoying what the other actors did in it. And and also it represents my friendship with Bob Clark. And that was very important to me. We used to play golf together. We hung out with each other's families and things like that. So you know, it has a very personal meaning for me. Besides being what it is, this classic, it's also a classic in here.
Thank you so much.
I still have the coat, the raccoon coat, and you can see it. I'll have to get it out of the mothballs because I dare not wear it anymore because PETA lurks. And so they allow to throw some kind of ink on it or something like that. So, but there's been a few cold mornings in Canada when I've thought of breaking it out and wearing it, you know.
Ooh, it's cold. Ooh. Okay, I wish I had the big barrel with the flames blowing right now. Oh, it's freezing.
So you don't wear that much anymore?
No, I don't wear it. I don't wear it because PETA could be lurking. And you know how they feel about coats, fur coats. Well, I'm trying to remember. I wore this in a couple of films. I wore it in a film called Face Off. It was a hockey movie. And also I wore it in Black Christmas later. And
I don't quite remember how it ended up that I decided to wear it, but it was probably something like, and I wore it all the time, so I must have shown up at my wardrobe fitting wearing the coat. And of course, the wardrobe lady said, "Why don't you just wear that coat? It's perfect for a college student." So thanks to Mom, my beautiful mom, who wanted me to be an actor and who got this coat for me, it's become an icon. Thanks, Mom.